Admiral Olivia Warren stood on the bridge of the HSS Retribution, her eyes fixed on the large display that showed the countdown timer. 29 days, 23 hours, and 58 minutes had passed since the Human Alliance Parliament had issued their ultimatum to the Zathrian hegemony. In just 2 minutes, the largest fleet in the history of the galaxy would launch. Warren's hand tightened on the railing as memories of the New Eden massacre flashed through her mind. The colony had been peaceful. Scientists, farmers, teachers, and children. Over 2 million humans wiped out because the Zathrians wanted the planet's rare minerals. The security footage had shown families running for shelters that were systematically targeted by Zathrian bombers. Not even the hospital had been spared. Admiral, Lieutenant Paul Garcia called from his station. "We're receiving another transmission from the Galactic Council." Warren nodded. "Put it on screen." The face of Ambassador Krelzak, the Aurelian representative to the Council, appeared. His blue skin was darker than usual, a sign of stress in his species. "Admiral Warren, please reconsider this course of action. The Council is prepared to issue sanctions against the Zathrian hegemony. There is no need for military. The time for talk ended when they bombed our hospitals, Ambassador," Warren said, her voice calm but firm. "You had 30 days to bring them to justice. You chose to debate instead. But surely you cannot mean to send your entire fleet. Your worlds would be defenseless, and the numbers you have threatened to deploy are impossible. No species could hide such military capacity from the Council's monitors." Warren allowed herself a small smile. "The Council sees what we allow it to see, Ambassador. Your final warning has been received and noted. Retribution out." The screen went black. Warren turned to Garcia. "Any word from the Zathrians?" "No, Admiral. They maintain that the destruction of New Eden was justified under ancient mineral rights claims that predate human expansion." Garcia's voice shook slightly. "Their ambassador sent a personal message earlier. He said, and I quote, 'Human threats are as empty as human skulls.'" Warren nodded. "He'll learn differently soon enough." She walked to the center of the bridge where Chief Engineer Susan Miller was working on the quantum communication array. Miller had lost her brother and his family. "On New Eden, is the network ready, Susan?" Miller looked up, her eyes red-rimmed but focused. "Yes, Admiral. All 700,000 ships are connected. The network will allow simultaneous coordination across all vessels, even in FTL. Nothing like this has ever been attempted before." From behind them, Commander Ryan Blackwood stepped forward with a data tablet. "The last reports from the shipyards are in. All vessels are crewed, armed, and ready for launch." Warren took the tablet and reviewed the numbers one final time. For 50 years, humanity had presented a humble face to the galaxy, hiding shipyards, and gas giants and asteroid belts, building in secret while smiling at diplomatic functions. The Zathrians and the other older species had seen humans as newcomers to be exploited or ignored. That illusion was about to be shattered forever. The console beside Warren beeped. A live feed appeared showing Captain Eric Johnson at ground control on Earth. Behind him, rows of officers coordinated the most complex military operation in human history. "Admiral Warren, all systems show green. The Parliament's final authorization has been received. The fleet awaits your command." Warren took a deep breath. This moment would change the course of galactic history. Humans had hoped to join the galactic community as peaceful explorers and traders. The Zathrians had forced a different path. "The countdown has reached 0, Admiral," Garcia said quietly. Warren nodded and pressed the ship-wide communication button. Her voice would reach not just the Retribution, but every human vessel about to launch. "This is Admiral Warren. The Zathrian hegemony has refused to acknowledge their crimes against humanity. They believed us weak. They believed us few. Today, we show them and the galaxy the truth." She paused, looking at the faces of her bridge crew, men and women who represented the best of humanity. "Launch the fleet." Across human space, shipyards hidden within 53 star systems activated. Massive bay doors opened on the dark sides of moons. Artificial asteroids split apart to reveal warships nestled inside. Gas giant facilities that had been disguised as research stations released destroyers by the hundreds. On the planet Proxima Beta, old veteran Bill Cooper stood outside his farm with his wife Nancy, watching the night sky. Suddenly, thousands of lights appeared, rising from the massive underground hangar 10 miles from their home. The ships kept coming, more and more until they filled the sky. "My God," Nancy whispered. "Did we really build all those?" Bill nodded, his face grim. "Every colony, every settlement. While we grew food and built homes, the deep factories were building these, just in case." In the Zathrian observation post at the edge of human space, Junior Observer Krekval was the first to sound the alarm. His sensors detected unusual activity in the Sol system. Then alerts came from his monitors near Alpha Centauri, then Proxima Centauri, then Tau Ceti. Within minutes, all his monitoring stations were reporting massive launches. "Impossible," he whispered, his claws trembling as he sent emergency signals to the Zathrian High Command. Impossible. On Earth, in the Parliament chamber, President Laura Steele watched the launch feeds with the other representatives. Some wept. Others prayed. Most sat in silence as humanity revealed its true face to the stars. The deception was necessary. Defense Minister Jason Kelly said quietly, "Ever since we discovered the Zathrian records about their standard procedure for dealing with emerging species that occupy resource-rich worlds." "I know," President Steele replied. "But after today, the galaxy will never look at humans the same way again. We'll be feared." "Better feared than exterminated," Kelly said. On the Galactic News Network, reporter Kara Williams broadcast live as the fleet assembled in Earth orbit. Her voice reached billions of aliens across thousands of worlds. This is Kara Williams reporting, live as the human fleet reveals itself. For those just joining us, ships continue to launch from every human world and outpost. Current estimates put the number at over 500,000 vessels and still climbing. The Galactic Council has called an emergency session. The Zathrian ambassador has reportedly collapsed upon seeing the initial reports. From her position on the Retribution, Admiral Warren watched as the ships formed up in perfect formation. The quantum network allowed for precision that would astonish the older races, who relied on conventional communications. Director Nicole Peters called from Lunar Command. "Admiral, all ships are in position. The fleet is yours to command." Warren looked at the tactical display. 700,000 warships arranged in attack formations that stretched beyond visual range. The largest armada ever assembled in the history of the galaxy. "Set course for Zathrian space," she ordered. "Tell all ships to prepare for FTL jump on my mark." As the massive human fleet prepared to depart, signals from all across the galaxy poured in. Questions, threats, pleas for negotiation. But from the Zathrian hegemony itself there was only silence. The galaxy was about to learn a painful lesson. Humans weren't just another species to be bullied or ignored. They were the nightmare hiding in plain sight. All ships, jump. The fleet vanished into FTL, leaving the Sol system empty and quiet once more. The message had been sent. The response would be written in the stars themselves. The Zathrian High Commander Drexor stared at the reports flooding his command center with disbelief. His scales had turned pale, a sign of extreme distress among his species. Around him, his officers worked frantically at their stations. Their movements quick and nervous. "This cannot be accurate," Drexor said, his voice barely a whisper. "Run the scans again." "We have run them 7 times, High Commander," said Sub-Commander Vextal. "The data is correct. The humans have launched approximately 700,000 warships. They are moving toward our space in perfect formation." Drexor slammed his clawed hand on the console. "Impossible. Our intelligence indicated they had less than 2,000 military vessels. Where did they hide such a force?" No one answered. No one needed to. The evidence was on the screens all around them. In the outer reaches of Zathrian space, Commander Alan Hayes led the first wave of human stealth destroyers. His ship, the HSS Silent Hunter, moved quietly through the darkness, followed by 5,000 identical vessels. Their mission was to secure the border regions and disable Zathrian early warning systems. All ships maintained stealth protocols. Hayes ordered through the quantum communication network. We are the eyes and ears of the fleet. Admiral Warren expects full sensor coverage of Zathrian space in 6 hours. Lieutenant Kate Young managed the stealth systems at her station. Commander, Zathrian patrol ships detected at coordinates 227-89-53. They appear to be on high alert, but their sensors aren't picking us up. Hayes nodded. Good. Move to flanking positions, but do not engage unless fired upon. Remember, we're not here for revenge. We're here to end this conflict quickly with minimal casualties. Young looked up. Sir, with respect, they killed 2 million colonists on New Eden. I know, Lieutenant. I lost my cousin and her family there. Hayes's voice was firm. But there are billions of innocent Zathrians who had nothing to do with that decision. We are soldiers, not murderers. The difference matters. Young nodded, turning back to her console. Meanwhile, across the galaxy, the news of humanity's massive fleet spread like wildfire. On the Galactic Council station, representatives from 100 species gathered in emergency session. The chamber was filled with anxious voices. Kara Williams, the human reporter for Galactic News Network, stood outside the council chamber, broadcasting live to trillions of viewers. The council has been in emergency session for 3 hours now, she reported. Sources say the Zathrian representative is demanding military assistance from other council members, citing the human alliance as an existential threat to all civilized species. So far, no other race has offered support. Behind her, the Borellian ambassador exited the chamber. Kara quickly moved to intercept him. Ambassador Zerg, will the Borellian Empire send ships to aid the Zathrians? The tall, four-armed alien looked down at her. The Borellian Empire has declared strict neutrality in this conflict. The Zathrians chose their path when they attacked your colony. But just last month you signed a defense pact with the Zathrians, Kara pressed. That was before we knew humans had 700,000 warships, the ambassador said bluntly. We have revised our strategic assessment of the situation. As the diplomats argued, Director Nicole Peters oversaw the fleet's strategic deployment from Lunar Command on Earth's moon. Holographic displays showed the positions of every ship in the human armada. Stealth destroyers have reached positions along the border, reported her assistant, Jeff Brown. The main fleet will arrive in Zathrian space in 45 minutes. Peters nodded. Any response to our transmission? Nothing official, Brown said. But we're picking up massive civilian evacuation efforts from their military installations. Their orbital shipyards are being abandoned. They know what's coming, Peters said. Update Admiral Warren. Tell her the Zathrians are moving their people out of harm's way. That's a good sign. Admiral Warren received the update on the bridge of the Retribution. The massive flagship led the center formation of the human fleet, surrounded by tens of thousands of support vessels. They're evacuating civilians, she told her bridge crew. It seems the Zathrians aren't willing to sacrifice their own people, unlike what they did to ours, Chief Engineer Susan Miller said bitterly. Warren turned to her tactical officer. Commander Blackwood, prepare to broadcast our terms across all Zathrian frequencies when we enter their home system. Yes, Admiral, Blackwood replied. The translation team has finished the final version. Warren looked at the vast human fleet moving through space around her ship. For generations, humanity had presented itself as just another minor species, hiding its true industrial and military capacity. The deception had been necessary after their first deep space probes had discovered records of how the older galactic powers dealt with emerging threats. On a Zathrian colony world, Jack Robinson found himself stranded as chaos erupted around him. The human trader had been doing business when news of the fleet broke. Now he watched as the streets filled with panicked Zathrians. They're coming. To kill us all! A Zathrian shopkeeper wailed, closing his store. The humans will destroy every planet. No, they won't, Jack tried to explain. Humans don't wage war like that. The shopkeeper stared at him with 4 frightened eyes. Then why send 700,000 warships? Jack had no good answer. He didn't understand it himself. Back on the fleet, Medical Officer Henry Wells prepared his staff for potential casualties. He hoped. There wouldn't be many, but he had to be ready. The Zathrian home fleet is moving to intercept, reported his assistant, Nurse Gloria Reed. Do you think they'll actually fight? They're outnumbered 100 to 1. Wells shook his head. Pride makes people do stupid things. Let's hope their commanders value their crew's lives more than their pride. The human fleet's FTL engines disengaged as they reached the edge of the Zathrian home system. 700,000 ships appeared simultaneously, their formation perfect and intimidating. At the center, the Retribution's massive form dwarfed everything around it. We have arrived at the target system, Lieutenant Garcia announced. Zathrian home fleet detected. Approximately 7,000 vessels moving to defensive positions around their homeworld. Admiral Warren stood and straightened her uniform. This moment would determine whether the next hours would bring peace or war. Open a channel to the Zathrian fleet, she ordered. Broadcast on all frequencies, all languages. The communication officer nodded. Channel open, Admiral. Warren looked directly at the camera. Her face would be seen by every Zathrian on their ships and homeworld. This is Admiral Olivia Warren of the Human Alliance. Your government was given an ultimatum following the unprovoked massacre of New Eden Colony. That ultimatum has expired. She paused, letting her words sink in. We do not wish to destroy your civilization. We do not seek vengeance against your people, but we will have justice for our dead. She nodded to Blackwood, who transmitted the full terms of surrender. You have 1 hour to respond, Warren concluded. Choose wisely. Across the galaxy, billions watched and waited as the future hung in the balance. The 1 hour deadline set by Admiral Warren ticked away in tense silence. On the bridge of the HSS Retribution, Communications Officer Lisa Baker monitored thousands of transmissions flooding through space. Admiral, I'm intercepting massive amounts of communications between the Zathrian homeworld and other species, Baker reported. The Galactic Council is in continuous emergency session. 17 major powers have officially declared neutrality in the last 20 minutes. Warren nodded. And the Zathrians? Their leadership appears to be divided, Admiral. Military channels show arguments between fleet commanders. Some want to fight. Others are calling for immediate surrender. Lieutenant Garcia looked up from his station. Admiral, we're receiving a direct transmission from High Commander Drexor of the Zathrian Defense Forces. Put him through, Warren ordered. The large view screen showed the pale-scaled face of the Zathrian commander. His eyes darted nervously, and his voice trembled slightly as he spoke. Admiral Warren, the Zathrian hegemony requests a 24-hour extension to consider your terms. Warren's expression remained neutral. That request is denied, High Commander. Your government had 30 days to consider their actions. Your time is almost up. But our ruling council is deadlocked. Some factions still believe this is an elaborate deception. They claim it's impossible for humans to have built such a fleet without detection. Their disbelief is not my concern, Warren replied. You have 18 minutes remaining. As the transmission ended, strategic analyst Daniel Morgan approached Warren. The young officer had been studying Zathrian military doctrine for years. They're stalling, Admiral, Morgan said quietly. Their planetary defense grid is powering up and they're moving civilian ships to create a buffer zone between us and their military vessels. Warren frowned. Using civilians as shields? Yes, ma'am. It's a standard Zathrian tactic. They believe we won't fire through civilian vessels. Warren turned to Commander Blackwood. Deploy the Consciousness Networked Combat System. Target only military vessels and installations. Activate ghost protocols. Blackwood nodded and entered the commands into his console. Throughout the human fleet, a new system came online. It was humanity's greatest military secret. An AI network that could coordinate the movements of all 700,000 ships simultaneously while predicting enemy actions with uncanny accuracy. On the Galactic Council station, representatives from hundreds of species watched the confrontation through live feeds. The normally noisy chamber was eerily silent. Ambassador Krelzak of the Aurelian Confederation addressed the council with a trembling voice. We have drastically underestimated the humans, he said. Our intelligence suggested they were barely managing to defend a dozen colonies. Instead, they have built the largest fleet ever seen in the galaxy. The Vorbian representative stood up. How did they hide such military capacity? Our monitoring stations detected nothing. Because we were looking in the wrong places, replied the Tyrillian ambassador. Humans are deceptive by nature. While we monitored their official shipyards, they were building in gas giants, hollow asteroids, and underground facilities. In a private chamber off the main council hall, 5 of the most powerful species in the galaxy met in secret. The Arconians, Medusan Collective, Jorax Empire, Calbri Republic, and Centauri Kingdom, ancient enemies who rarely agreed on anything, now spoke in hushed tones. We must reconsider our policies toward humanity, said the Arconian Prime. We have dismissed them as primitive newcomers, but they have revealed themselves as a major power overnight. The Jorax Emperor's hologram flickered. Perhaps it is time to offer them a seat on the High Council. After they destroy the Zathrians? Asked the Centauri King. That would be rewarding aggression. The Zathrians massacred a human colony, the Calbri president reminded them. By our own laws, the humans are entitled to retribution. Yes, the Medusan elder hissed. But not with 700,000 warships. Such force is unprecedented. Back at the edge of Zathrian space, Jack Robinson had managed to secure passage on a refugee ship. Around him, frightened Zathrian families clutched their belongings. Children whimpered as the overcrowded vessel pushed away from the spaceport. Zathrian mother with 3 small children sat across from Jack. She stared at him with a mixture of fear and curiosity. You are human, she said finally. Will your people kill us all? Jack shook his head. No, humans don't target civilians. We're not like that. Then why so many ships? She asked, holding her children closer. To end the war quickly, Jack explained. To make sure your leaders know they can't win, so they surrender without a fight. The Zathrian seemed unconvinced. Our history teaches that when a species shows great strength, they use it to dominate others. Jack looked out the viewport at the stars. Maybe that's the difference between us. On the Retribution, the countdown reached 0. Admiral Warren stood tall as she addressed the Zathrian leaders one final time. Your time has expired. We have not received your surrender. However, we detect your civilian evacuation efforts and will allow them to continue unhindered. She paused. This is your final opportunity. Surrender now, or we will proceed with military action. High Commander Drexor's image appeared again on the screen. His scales now had a bluish tint, a sign of extreme stress in his species. The military council votes to surrender, he said, his voice heavy with defeat. But the political council refuses. They control the planetary defense systems and have ordered our fleet to engage you. Warren nodded. Understood. Move your surrendering vessels to these coordinates. They will not be harmed. As the transmission ended, Warren turned to her bridge crew. Begin the operation. Remember, our targets are military only. Minimal civilian casualties. Throughout the human fleet, the consciousness-networked combat system activated fully. The system allowed human operators to control multiple ships simultaneously through neural links, giving the fleet unprecedented coordination. Commander Michelle Nelson, the tactical officer on the Retribution, closed her eyes as her consciousness expanded through the network. She could feel thousands of ships responding to her thoughts, moving in perfect harmony. System active, she reported. All ships in position. The human fleet began to move. Instead of a chaotic charge, the 700,000 vessels split into precise formations. Smaller, faster ships darted between the Zathrian vessels that had refused to surrender. Larger battleships positioned themselves near key military installations. On his flagship, Zathrian Admiral Krell found himself surrounded by 10,000 human vessels that had appeared seemingly from nowhere. How did they move so quickly? He gasped. It's impossible to coordinate such maneuvers. His weapons officer turned to him with panic in his eyes. Admiral, they've somehow bypassed our shields. They could destroy us at any moment, but they're just waiting. Krell understood the message. The humans were showing they could annihilate his ship at will, but were choosing not to. His crew looked to him for orders. With a heavy sigh, Krell opened a channel to all Zathrian vessels. "This is Admiral Krell. All ships power down weapons and shields. The humans have won." Across the Zathrian home system, military ships began to surrender one by one. The political council, seeing their fleet capitulate, finally ordered the planetary defense grid to stand down. On the Retribution, Admiral Warren watched as the Zathrian resistance collapsed without a single shot fired. The galaxy had just witnessed something unprecedented, not just the size of the human fleet, but how it had defeated an enemy through sheer presence rather than destruction. "Send the occupation protocols to all ships," Warren ordered, "and inform Earth that the operation was successful. The Zathrians have surrendered." As the news spread across the galaxy, species that had dismissed humans as primitive newcomers now watched in stunned silence. The message was clear. Humanity had been hiding in plain sight, and the galaxy would never be the same again. 2 days after the surrender of the Zathrian forces, human ships moved into position around key military installations across the hegemony's territory. Admiral Warren had established her command center in the orbital station above the Zathrian homeworld. The massive station, once the pride of Zathrian military might, now served as the headquarters for the human occupation force. Vice Admiral Gregory Bennett supervised the processing of surrendered Zathrian vessels. His team worked efficiently, disabling weapon systems while allowing life support and basic functions to remain operational. "That's the 500th capital ship processed today," reported Lieutenant Amy Wilson. "The Zathrians are cooperating fully. No resistance so far." Bennett nodded. "They understand their situation. Our goal isn't to humiliate them, just to ensure they can't threaten anyone again." Wilson looked up from her tablet. "Sir, some of the Zathrian officers have asked about their crews. They want to know if they'll be executed." Bennett frowned. "Executed? Why would they think that?" "Apparently, it's what they would do in our position. Their military doctrine calls for the elimination of captured enemy combatants." "Tell them that's not how we operate," Bennett said firmly. "All military personnel will be processed, identified, and released to civilian status once we've completed the demilitarization." On the Zathrian homeworld, weapons specialist Frank Turner stood before the massive planetary defense control center. Engineers from his team were systematically disconnecting the planet's orbital weapons platforms. "These systems are impressive," Turner told his assistant Sergeant Peter Hayes. "The targeting computers are at least a generation ahead of what they shared with the Galactic Council." Hayes nodded. "They've been hiding their advanced tech, just like we have." Turner ran his hand along a control panel. "The difference is, we hid our ships to protect ourselves. They hid their weapons to maintain an advantage over their neighbors." A Zathrian engineer approached them cautiously. "Sir, we've prepared the access codes for the remaining defense satellites as requested." Turner thanked him. "We'll need your help to safely power down the antimatter containment fields." The Zathrians seemed surprised by the respectful treatment. "You're not going to simply destroy the platforms and risk debris falling onto populated areas?" Turner shook his head. "We're going to dismantle them properly. No shortcuts." Throughout Zathrian space, similar scenes played out as human forces secured military assets with surprising efficiency. Unlike traditional conquests, the humans established clear rules of engagement: military targets only, minimal civilian disruption, and no looting or property destruction. At the Galactic Council, the emergency session had extended into its third day. Representatives from hundreds of species debated the new reality created by humanity's show of force. "The Zathrian defeat was total yet bloodless," the Tellarite ambassador observed. "Not a single shot was fired. The humans could have destroyed their fleet but chose restraint." "That makes them more frightening, not less," countered the Vegan representative. "They demonstrated such overwhelming superiority that resistance was futile. And now, who among us can stand against 700,000 warships?" The human representative, Ambassador Sarah Lewis, entered the chamber to immediate silence. The normally noisy council fell completely quiet as she took her seat. The Human Alliance appreciates the Council's patience during this crisis, Lewis began. I am authorized to inform you that our military action against the Zathrian hegemony has concluded successfully. We have accepted their unconditional surrender and begun the process of demilitarization. The Council leader, a wizened Arcturian, leaned forward. And what are humanity's intentions now? Will these 700,000 ships be visiting other worlds next? Lewis smiled politely. Our fleet is returning to human space with only a security detachment remaining in Zathrian territory. We have no quarrel with any other species. But you understand our concern, the Arcturian pressed. Such military power changes the balance of the galaxy. The balance was already changing when the Zathrians slaughtered 2 million human colonists and faced no consequences from this council. Lewis replied, her voice still pleasant but with an edge of steel. We built our fleet not to dominate but to ensure our survival in a galaxy where aggression goes unpunished. Back on the Retribution, Admiral Warren reviewed the reports coming in from across Zathrian space. The operation was proceeding even more smoothly than expected. Dr. Linda Ross, the fleet's chief medical officer, entered Warren's office with a tablet. Admiral, I have the civilian casualty report. Warren took a deep breath. Despite their best efforts, she knew there would be some civilian losses. How bad? Ross handed her the tablet. 23 confirmed civilians, Admiral, mostly from accidents during the evacuation. No casualties from direct military action. Warren stared at the number. 23? Out of a population of billions? Yes, Admiral. The consciousness network allowed for unprecedented precision. Our ships were able to maneuver around civilian vessels even when they were placed directly in our path. Warren leaned back in her chair, relief evident on her face. The Zathrians lost more people in traffic accidents last week. The Zathrian medical authorities have actually requested our assistance, Ross added. They're impressed by our emergency response protocols. In the Retribution's detention area, Colonel Joe Adams supervised the interrogation of former High Commander Drexor. Unlike traditional interrogations, this one took place in a comfortable room with refreshments. I don't understand, Drexor said, his scales returning to their normal color as his stress levels decreased. Why am I not being tortured for information? Adams looked genuinely confused. Why would we torture you? We have access to all your military systems already, and torture produces unreliable intelligence. But I ordered the attack on your colony, Drexor said quietly. Yes, and you'll face justice for that, Adams replied. But justice, not revenge. You'll receive a fair trial with legal representation. Drexor stared at the human officer. Your species is strange. You hide the largest fleet in galactic history, yet when victory is yours, you show mercy. Adams shrugged. The purpose of the fleet was to prevent wars, not win them. The Zathrian High Council didn't believe humans could be a threat, so you attacked our colony. Now everyone knows we can defend ourselves. On Earth, President Laura Steele addressed the Human Alliance Parliament. The representatives from 53 human worlds listened as she explained the next steps. The Zathrian surrender has been secured with minimal loss of life, she announced. Their military capacity is being dismantled, and those responsible for the New Eden massacre will face trial under galactic law. She paused, looking at the solemn faces before her. But our work is not finished. Today I am proposing the establishment of the Human Protection Accords, a new framework for interspecies relations based not on threats, but on mutual respect. We revealed our fleet to defend ourselves. Now we must use our new standing to build a more just galaxy for all species. The Parliament erupted in applause. As the Human Alliance began the complex work of restructuring its relationship with the galaxy, fleet ships gradually withdrew from Zathrian space. The message had been delivered. Humanity would no longer hide in the shadows. 3 months after what became known as the 7-Hour War, Admiral Olivia Warren stood in the newly constructed chamber of the reformed Galactic Council. The room was filled with representatives from across the galaxy. At the center of the chamber, 7 seats formed the new Security Council, with Earth now holding a permanent position. Warren wore her formal dress uniform, decorated with the single ribbon that all human military personnel had received for the Zethrian operation. Unlike other species, humans had chosen not to create elaborate medals for their bloodless victory. Ambassador Sarah Lewis stood beside Warren as they prepared for the signing ceremony. "Nervous?" Lewis asked quietly. "A little," Warren admitted. "I'm better at commanding fleets than at diplomacy." "You're here because they respect you," Lewis said. "To them, you're the face of human military power." The Arcturian Council leader called the session to order. Today marks a historic moment in galactic history. With the signing of the Human Protection Accords, we established new principles for interspecies relations. Warren watched as representatives from 73 species, including many that had previously been hostile to human interests, approached the central table to sign the document. The accords contained 3 simple principles: respect for sovereign territory, prohibition of unprovoked military action, and consequences for violations. The Zethrian representative, a civilian leader named Krelvor who had opposed the war against humans, signed last. He looked at Warren with an expression that mixed respect with lingering fear. "My people are grateful for your restraint, Admiral," he said quietly. "Another species might have exterminated us for what we did." Warren nodded. "That was never our intention. We wanted justice, not vengeance." "The distinction honors you," Krelvor said, "though many in the galaxy now fear humans more than ever." "Fear wasn't our goal either," Warren replied. "But perhaps a little fear will keep the peace until genuine respect can grow." On Earth, in the memorial gardens of New Washington, families of those lost in the New Eden massacre gathered for a solemn ceremony. President Laura Steele stood before the central monument, a simple stone pillar with the names of all 2 million victims inscribed in spiraling text. "We gather today not only to remember those we lost," Steele said, "but to honor how we responded to that loss. When faced with tragedy, we could have chosen blind vengeance. Instead, we chose justice with mercy." Among the crowd, Chief Engineer Susan Miller wiped tears from her eyes. She had lost her brother and his family on New Eden. Now, she placed flowers at the base of the monument, her hands trembling slightly. Vice President Carl Martinez stood beside her. "Your brother would be proud," he said gently. Miller nodded. "He always believed humanity could be better than our past, that we could learn from history instead of repeating it." "The Zethrian trials begin next week," Martinez said. "Those responsible will face justice under galactic law." "I know," Miller replied. "I'll be there to witness it, not for revenge but for closure." In orbit above Earth, Commander Julia Scott supervised the new Interspecies Military Cooperation Initiative. The program brought officers from various galactic powers to train alongside humans and learn from each other. "As you can see," Scott explained to a group of alien officers, "our fleet strength was never about aggression. It was a defensive measure, developed after we discovered how new species were often treated by established powers." A Borellian officer raised one of his 4 hands. "But how did you hide such production capacity from surveillance?" Scott smiled. "We didn't hide our capacity. We hid how we were using it. Every year we reported our industrial output accurately to the Galactic Council. We simply classified most ships as deep space exploration vessels or emergency evacuation craft." "An administrative deception," the Borellian said, impressed. "No wonder our analysts missed it." Meanwhile, in the former Zethrian military headquarters, now repurposed as a regional peacekeeping center, Commander Alan Hayes met with representatives from neighboring systems. "The human occupation forces will withdraw completely within 6 months, Hayes explained. "We're already down to just 20,000 personnel, focused mainly on training the new Zethrian Civil Defense Force." "And the weapons platforms?" asked a concerned Zelbian diplomat. "The Zethrians have threatened our borders for centuries. All offensive weapons have been dismantled," Hayes assured him. "The remaining systems are purely defensive and have range limitations hardwired into them." The Zelbian seemed skeptical. "And we're supposed to trust the Zethrians to honor these limitations after you leave?" Hayes smiled. "You'll notice small, Satellites in orbit around key installations. Those are monitoring stations with direct feeds to both your government and the Galactic Council. Any violation will trigger immediate sanctions. On the edges of human space, Jack Robinson had returned to his trading route. His ship, the Lucky Star, approached a space station that housed multiple species. Before the war, humans had been treated with mild disdain here. Now, as he docked, he noticed a very different reception. The docking manager, a tall vegan, personally came to meet his ship. "Welcome, Mr. Robinson. We have an excellent berth prepared for you." Robinson raised an eyebrow as he was escorted through the station. Aliens moved respectfully out of his way. Some even bowed slightly. "This is new," he commented to the manager. The vegan looked embarrassed. "Well, perspectives have changed somewhat since your people revealed their capabilities." "I'm just a trader," Robinson said. "Same as before." Of course, the vegan said hurriedly. "But you understand, 700,000 warships make quite an impression." Robinson sighed. Fear wasn't the relationship humans wanted with other species, but perhaps it was a necessary first step toward genuine respect. Back on the Retribution, now orbiting Earth, Admiral Warren stood in her private quarters, looking out at the stars. Most of the fleet had been returned to its hidden docks and shipyards. Only a small portion remained on active patrol. There was a chime at her door. "Enter," she called. Strategic analyst Daniel Morgan stepped in with a data tablet. "Final report on fleet redeployment, Admiral. 90% of vessels have returned to standby status." Warren took the tablet. "And the reaction from the galactic community?" "Mixed," Morgan admitted. "Some species are proposing mutual defense pacts with us. Others are desperately trying to increase their own military capabilities. The Medusan Collective has voted to double their fleet strength." Warren shook her head. "They're missing the point. We never wanted an arms race." "Perhaps not, but it's human nature to prepare for threats. Other species are no different." Warren turned back to the viewport. "Our ancestors spent millennia fighting each other before they learned cooperation was more productive than competition. I suppose we can't expect the rest of the galaxy to learn that lesson overnight." "The Human Protection Accords are a start," Morgan offered. 73 species have committed to peaceful resolution of conflicts." "Yes," Warren agreed. "A start." She watched as a group of small ships departed from Earth, the first joint human-alien scientific expedition since the war. The vessels carried researchers from 12 species to study a newly discovered phenomenon in a nearby nebula. "Our fleet protected us when we needed it," Warren said softly. "But this, cooperation, discovery, building something together, this is what humanity has always truly wanted from the stars." As the ships disappeared into the darkness, Warren allowed herself a small smile. The galaxy had learned to fear humans. Perhaps now they could learn to work with them too.